Grace, mercy, and peace to you from God our Father and from Jesus Christ our Lord. This is the day that the Lord has made. We are glad and we're rejoicing in it. It is a good day to be alive. It is a good day to be in the study of the word with each and every one of you, doing what the scripture has taught us to do. For we know that the scriptures teach that we should study to show ourselves approved unto God, workmen that need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. It also teaches in the book of First Peter that, like newborn babes, we should desire the milk of the word so that we can grow in grace and in the knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And we know that the Gospels teach that we should search the scriptures, for in them we find everlasting life. Why? Because the scriptures speak of Jesus. It's so good to see you on this Saturday morning. We're so grateful that you're taking time to join us for Formation Saturday. This is our time of impartation, of empowerment. This is where we have conversations with faith leaders around subjects that develop our faith and that help us to be better, not just Christians, but better people. And so in last month, we took time with Miss Christina Garrett, Miss Kelly Daniels Freeman, and with Miss, oh my God, Miss T. Elmore. And we talked to the women about self-care. And we spent our whole time last month talking about self-care. This month, I thought it would be great to bring in the key voices in my life, the men that I go to for counsel and for instruction, to bring them on to speak to the men. I'm going to bring them on in just a moment, but I do want to begin with at least reading a scripture text to kind of base our time in the word, and then I'll bring our guest onto the platform. The scripture I want to read to you is from Matthew chapter 15, verses 15 down through verse 20. I'm always reading from the New American Standard Version of the text. It says, Peter said to Jesus, explain the parable to us. Jesus said, are you still lacking in understanding also? Here's what I want you to hear. Do you not understand that everything that goes into the mouth passes into the stomach and is eliminated? But the things that proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and those defile the man. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, slanders. These are the things which defile the man. But to eat with unwashed hands does not defile the man. I want to highlight again verse 18 and the opening phrase of verse 19. The things that proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and those defile the man, for out of the heart comes evil thoughts. Jesus is saying in this passage that what's in us is what's going to come out of us. And so it's important for us, if we're going to have a good product, if we're going to produce something good, we have to make sure that what's in us is good. And so today's conversation is all around how we think about ourselves as men. Our positive self-image is the term we're going to use throughout this conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. One of our speakers is still on the way, but all of the others are present. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Our guests today include Apostle Larry B. Aiken. He's coming in. He had a pastoral emergency, and he'll be in just a few minutes. My Georgia pastor is on in the person of Bishop Dr. Brian Keith Hodges, the preaching machine, and the man who married me and my wife, the man who's mentored me well over 20 years, the man who's going to dedicate Baby Kendall in just a few months when the time comes, Pastor Darrell Montgomery. I'm going to bring both of these gentlemen onto the screen at this time, and we're going to start our conversation. Pastor, Bishop, how are you? How are you?
Fantastic.
Doing well, Pastor. How you doing today, man?
I am well. Listen, this is going to be so crazy good because everything you hear me preach and teach, I get from the guys that you see on the screen. Bishop Akins is on his way. I'm listening to Pastor Dr. Brian Keith Hodges every week. Every time I have a question about life, money, marriage, anything, I get Pastor Montgomery on the phone, and they kind of guide me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to throw a question out there. I'm going to throw a question first to Bishop Hodge, and then I'll throw a question to Pastor Munn, and we're just going to toss it around. I really don't even have much I want to say because I want to be instructed just like the rest of the brothers. Okay, so I'm gonna throw the first question to Bishop Hodge, second question to Pastor Munn, and we'll keep going in that way. So the first question for the night is, why do men need positive self-image? Why do men need positive self-image?
First, let me be intentionally thankful to you, Pastor Mickles, for an opportunity to share with the wonderful people of your congregation and those who follow you in Metaspace, and to be partnered with this gracious, gregarious, and grace leader, Pastor Montgomery. Thank you. What a great joy of mine to be present. I think it's an incredible question. It is a loaded question. I think we need to at least unpack it. I will begin by saying it is incredibly important for every human being to have a positive self-image. Every human being that's been created in the image of God and his likeness should have positive self-image. But then you'd have to ask the question, where does positive self-image come? What is positive self-image? Well, the truth is, positive self-image is only how we see ourselves in a sense that is accumulated. In other words, you would take a number of self-impressions and stack them together, and that's how you come up with a self-image. I'm giving you kind of a Cliff Notes definition, but you take those images over the long time. If you were to think about your life, who are you at the core is not who you were last week, not even who you were last year, but over the collection of years, who you are is as a result of those experiences that you have had over a duration. And accumulation is a manifestation of who you are. And so it's important because who we believe we are, who we see in the mirror, and what we think when we see it in the mirror determines almost everything about us in life. It determines just about every single thing. It determines the kind of friends we'll have. It determines the kind of jobs we'll get. It determines the kind of people we'll marry or date. It determines the kind of churches we'll attend. It determines the kind of schools we'll go to. It determines the kind of organizations, the social organizations that we will have. Everything about who we see. Years ago, that phenomenal gift to music and leader in everything pop, Michael Jackson, wrote a song about starting with the man in the mirror. And I can never forget that incredible ballad that was chock full of wonderful ways in which to think about life and race and relationship. And one of the things that Michael Jackson seems to suggest is that there's nothing that is ever going to happen if we don't start by looking in the mirror. So who we are, who we see, what we think when we are looking at ourselves will determine a number of outcomes. So why is it important? It's probably important for about 4 reasons. Number one, God created us with a purpose. That purpose that God created us with will either fly or fail based on how we see ourselves. God created us with a purpose. God gave us something to accomplish or something to do. Whenever I hear people say, I just don't know what my purpose is, my initial conversation with them is, when you look in the mirror, who do you see? I remember when I started my doctoral program at Columbia Theological, Roger Nishioka, PhD from Georgia State, was my professor. And when I walked in, I'm the only African-American, and I'm probably one of 4 males in the whole group. There's 20 of us or so. And he says to me, he said, Hodge, you got to locate yourself. I'm like, okay, that's That's not so hard, but why is that important? And he said, you have to locate yourself so that when people hear you speak, when they see your writings or they look at your presentations or they're working in a small group with you, they know who you are. They know who you are, and they know how to perceive what you're saying based on how you locate yourself and what you believe about yourself and your location. I'll give you an example. I grew up in a home where my mother and father were not affectionate. They were not. They loved us without a doubt. But there was no hugs, no kisses, no showing up to your being in a play and patting you on the back and saying, Dad, I'm so proud of my boy. None of that. They did love us, but they absolutely didn't do that. That was not their thing. And so a friend of mine asked me, how did you evolve as a result? And I said this to them. I said, everything I didn't get, I became. He said, really? I said, yes. So I hugged my kids every day. I told them I loved them every day. Even as my star was on the rise and I was traveling around the country, I'd take a red-eye flight just to get back to see my son or daughter do a 2-sentence greeting at a play because I wanted them to know my daddy is here, right? So somebody else who may have a negative self-image will become the negative embodiment of what they didn't get. The profound impact I had because I had a positive self-image was I became what I didn't get. And I'll give you a little story and then I'll wrap up. Because Pastor Mickles, it's hard for you to ask a preacher anything, and once they get started, they stop, right? We're like the wind-up toy. Wind us up and let us go, and we'll keep going. There were two young men grew up together. One was particularly handsome. One was particularly smart, very scholastic, academic, and was socially adept. The other one was just a regular, average-looking, average intelligent kid. But the two of them became best friends. They went through elementary, middle, high school together. They graduated together, went to college together, went to graduate school together. As a matter of fact, they got married on the same in the same month together. They did everything together, got hired together. The handsome, intelligent young man was always told he was going to be something, he was going to do great things, he was going places. The average kid, nobody ever said anything to him. So they work for this company. CEO sends out a memo. He says, I've served here 40 years. I am going to retire. There are 2 candidates that I'm vetting. One will get the job. The other one will get fired, and that's it. So the particularly handsome, intelligent young man said to his friend, the average-looking guy, he said, hey, when the old man is gone, I'll bring you back. I know he's going to pick me. When the old man's gone, I'll bring you back. Okay. Well, the CEO emerges from his board meeting. He picks the average-looking kid and not the exceptional handsome kid. Wow. And the exceptional handsome kid who is academically adept says, I can't believe it's you. Nobody ever told you were smart. Nobody ever told you you'd be anything. Nobody ever told you you were going anywhere. They always told me that. How did you get the job? He says, you're right. They never did tell me that. But I looked in the mirror and I listened to what they told you, and I told myself. I think that's the story, that until we're willing to embrace who we are, we will live in the shadow of others. We will apprise them, and we will devalue ourselves.
My God.
Mighty God. Mighty God. Pastor Munn, you want to jump in on this before we move to the next one?
Man, he didn't leave me a comma, a semicolon, a period. but let me attach that to that and kind of turn and go left a little bit. Funny you kind of timed this like you did. Because Pastor, I just jumped off into another series that I think is going to be pivotal for our church, our men in the church, called Grounded to Greatness. And I'm exploring the relationship between Elijah and Elisha. And the reason why I'm doing that, and yesterday's message was talking about mentors, mantles, and movements. Okay. And I wanted to dive into that because I'm seeing something in society, in our culture, that is concerning me in that younger generation that I think we've missed as men of age. And this is going to kind of pull on you and me because of our relationship through mentorship, if you will. I think one of the reasons why we as men, in particular Black men, have a positive self-image is because we are responsible for those who come along after us. Okay. And the reason why that self-image needs to be one of prominence and one of fruitfulness, one of positivity, one that we can be proud of is because we're going to mentor that next generation, and they're going to follow or mimic what we do. And if what they see is not something that is fruitful, that is substantive, that is something that they should follow, then we're going to see a repetitive cycle that's going to happen over and over again as we have been. And we can't be satisfied with what we see coming out of this generation that's following us, because it's going to lead us to ruin as a people, or just period. And I want to tag on to something that Dr. Hodges just said about giving himself what he didn't get. I call that reverse pouring, because if I didn't get a particular thing, what feeds me is what I pour out that I didn't get. Okay. So that means that because I didn't get it, I'm tagging right on to what he said. I have to pour it into me through the mirror. Now I can pour it into someone else. Okay. And so now if I didn't get, I love you. If I didn't get, you're going to make it. If I didn't get an attaboy, if I didn't get the presence of my father, didn't get association, if I didn't get culture, if I didn't get camaraderie, all of these things that I didn't get, if I didn't get them, now I have to feed or pour that into myself through the concept of mirror. And now once I pour it into myself and I believe by is what I say, now I can pour that into some other young man that he can help build and strategize and construct a positive image about himself. You feel what I'm saying? And so I'm responsible for who comes along after me. I'm responsible primarily for those who comes out of my loins. So I have to give them that image. So if I don't have that positive self-image about myself, I cannot pour something that I do not have on the inside. No container can pour out of itself what has not been poured in. And sometimes I have to pour it into myself. So I got to do like David said, I got to encourage myself. Sometimes I got to tell myself I'm going to make it. Sometimes I just got to tell myself, you got this, that I am somebody. I am not what society says I am, but I am who God created me to be.
Wow. I can tell already we're going to need a B3 before this conversation is over. Pastor, I'm going to throw you this next question because you kind of brushed up against it, but I want us to open it up a little more. So since we know it's our responsibility, we know we need to locate ourselves. We know this comes from, as Bishop said, our self-impressions, how we've come to see ourselves, what we believe about ourselves. What are some of the challenges that we face as we try to develop this positive self-image? As we're trying to get the bad out so that we can put some good in, what are the challenges that we come up across that makes this a little difficult especially for me?
I think, Pastor, and I'm going to make one statement, and I'm going to see if I can't unpack that a little bit. I think one of the main things, and I'm basing this off of what I dove into yesterday, one of the things that I think is challenging us is bad or misprioritized mantles. Bad or misprioritized mantles. Okay, what do you mean by that? You look at verse 16 of 1 Kings 19, and Jehu, son of Nimshi, thou shalt anoint to be king over Israel. And Elisha, you're going to anoint him to be prophet in thy room. Anoint to be prophet in thy room. Anoint to be prophet in thy stead. Or, in other words, to succeed you. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think we are missing in the Black culture, the Black community right now, is that succession planning, or if it is a bad or a misprioritized succession. Okay, so the mantle that's being passed is not one of a positive self-image. It's not one of fruitfulness. It is, if I can just be real and be myself, Mickles, you know me.
Absolutely. That's why I wanted you.
We are teaching the young men how to get over, and how to mac, and how to run women, how to deceive your wife, how to do all of these things. These are bad or misprioritized mantles, because what we don't understand as Black men, or as men, period, our gender is an anointing. Okay, our gender. Our very gender is an anointing, because the word anoint means to set aside or be setting apart for a particular office or function. It means to consecrate. So we as men, our gender, listen, we're the only ones that can cause the concept of procreation to come to pass. I don't care what society says. I don't care what the LGBTQ and all them other letters say. I don't care if you get two of this and put them together. No, if you leave me out of it, there can be no procreation, which means there can be no succession. So if the Lord tells Elijah to anoint Elisha to be prophet in thy room, or to be prophet instead, or to be prophet next, after you go off the scene, he's going to replace you. That is the concept of divine succession. Okay, he's going to succeed you. Now, if I look at that from a practical standpoint, in the charismatic church, one of the things that I think we've missed is we've been so bent over the past 15, 20 years creating more prophets and more evangelists and more this and more that, but we have not been creating many fathers and daddies and husbands and all of that. We've been pouring over into those that get a lot of notoriety in one place. But our primary assignment based on gender is to be a good husband and a good father. I don't think there's been enough weight put on that concept as far as that mantle, other than others' mantle. We want people to lay hands on me. I want you to lay hands on me because I want your mantle. No, you don't need my mantle. You need yours, because God has already given you a mantle to pass on to those that come out of your loins. That's the prioritized mantle that we should be embracing as men. Okay, because I can be the greatest of this and the greatest of that, and other people can throw all up at me and all the accolades and all of that, and miss my daughters, and I will have failed as a father. I will have failed as a husband. I will have failed as a daddy, and that's the mantle that I have to pass on. Not this other stuff, not ministry, not this, and all of that stuff is good in its place. I don't knock that, but if I can just be a good daddy, if I can be a good father, if I can be a good husband, then I think God would be more pleased than if I'm a good pastor or a good preacher. Because before there was a preacher, there was a daddy. Before there was a church, there was a marriage. And I got to make sure that I am that before I am this. And I think we're oh, Jesus, but don't get me started. Oh, Lord, have mercy, Jesus. Misprioritized mantle.
Oh, Jesus. This is rich. Bishop Akins has made it in. I want to bring him up. Good afternoon. Good morning.
Good afternoon, sir. God bless you. God bless you, Pastor.
So glad to see you, sir. Pastor Montgomery, Bishop Hodges, Apostle Bishop Akins, everybody's on. You got in just in time for this question, Apostle. I'm gonna throw this next question straight to you. All right.
Did you give it to Dr. Montgomery first? Because I was already shouting. I was shouting in the back. So if he's gonna continue like he's continuing, then I don't have a problem staying backstage. Sound like backstage might be the safest place for me. He got to talking ministry and marriage, and he got to waving his hand and clapping, and don't get him started. And he pretty much said, I'd rather be a good husband before I'm a good pastor, a good man before I'm a good preacher. I mean, he just kind of drove it all home. And the truth is, hold my mule, let me shout, because if he's running it like that, I mean, I'm all for it. I'm all ears. But let me do my ABCs. But let me just say, Dr. Montgomery, anytime, because what you said was so prolific. If I get stuck, go and help the brother out. You got my permission to dive in and help me out at any time.
So Apostle, here's the question.
Okay.
I have this. Pastor Munn just helped me reprioritize my mentality. That my positive self-image needs to be that I need to be a good husband, father. I need to be a good man first. All the other stuff comes later. How can having that kind of a positive self-image impact my life holistically? How's that going to change my life coming to see myself in this way?
Well, you know, what he's saying is you become those things and the change becomes, automatically. If my whole life I have been used to seeing blight, if I have been used to seeing violence, if I've been used to seeing anything negative, and in my mind, my negatives became my positives. And so that's what I gave out. So if I grew up thinking that negative was positive, then I don't recognize positive when I see positive. Positive is now strange to me, and so if I get a positive image, self-image, if I get that positive image, and then let me say that is one of the problems. There is not enough positive self-image. So if this is all that I'm looking at, and if I have grown up in a situation where I'm told and I'm led to believe that this is what a man looks like, this is what you do, and then I become no more than a grown copycat, because I've never really known what positive is. So when positive comes to my life, I fight that which is positive, because it goes against the grain of everything that I have learned. And then watch this. And most of what I've learned on my own. So now you're talking about a man having to relearn, rethink, be reprogrammed. Being in the military, I was in military intelligence, counterintelligence. When soldiers would come from war, we had to do what we call a deprogramming. And that was some of the toughest things in the world. We had to deprogram them from what they seen, from what they heard, and from what they learned. We had to totally detach them from what was their reality. Wow. And now tell them, as you coming back into society, that's no longer a reality because you can't use what you've learned in civilian life.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a struggle because now here I am. I've learned it at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. And now here comes a man saying everything you learned was wrong. Let me show you the right way. You look more like an enemy than a help.
Mm.
You don't look like you're coming because you're going against everything that I've been taught. So the positive self-image helps me if I can grasp the fact that they're trying to help me and not harm me, that they're trying to help develop me and not, are not hating on me or undermining what I think is success. So we have a society of men that have grown up looking, watching, receiving negative images. And then they run into a man that genuinely loves them, genuinely cares them, and say, brother, let me show you another way. And now it's hard after 20 plus years, 18 plus years to embrace any man, because my question is, why did you wait 25 years before you tried to help me?
Man.
Why now? Why help me now?
Wow.
If what I was doing and the images that I was portraying was so wrong, why didn't somebody say anything before now?
Hmm.
I'm 25, I got 4 babies, no wife, 4 baby mamas.
Hmm.
Why didn't somebody help me before then?
Wow.
Man.
And so now here I am. Everything I've learned, I learned it to survive.
Hmm.
And now here you come talking about there's a better way, there's another way. Didn't somebody have the courage to approach me, to talk to me before now?
Mighty
Do
God.
you really care 25 years later what image so before we can help men, black men, with their positive self-image, we have to apologize for what we have not done when we should have done it.
Wow. Wow.
And after we apologize, put ourselves out there, apologize, now let's walk and let me show you a better way. But don't try to show me without apologizing, because I'm 30 now.
My God.
Wow. Wow.
But the self-image would help me. Now let me say this. Here I am. I'm 64 years old. And because of societal images of the way people look at me, I still cross the street. If I'm on one side and if I'm on the same side as a white woman, it's automatically in my mind. 64 years old, I still cross the street. If I'm in the elevator, I move all the way back if it's just she and I. If I'm in the grocery store and she has her pocketbook in the grocery cart and she walks off, I walk off.
Right.
Because I understand a white woman's cry. There's an accident. The police show up. She's crying. He asks her what's wrong. She tells him. He don't ask me what's wrong. He interrogates me as to why I did it. He don't come and say, well, Mr. Aiken, what happened? He come and say, Mr. Aiken, she said you did this. Why did you do that? Never ask me my side. So society has pushed me in a place where I look at myself differently than everybody else look at me.
My
And I
God.
shouldn't be doing that at 64 years old.
My God.
Jesus have mercy. Now, Apostle, this is not where I'm planning to go next.
Okay.
But
You might want to ask Pastor Montgomery then.
But these words are starting to, in my mind, they're starting to come together. That what you described is survival versus the success of the next that Pastor Munn was talking about. So I'm gonna throw this to Bishop Hodge if he's able to. So how do we bridge this disconnect between survival and true success as men? Because what we just heard, the priority is to succeed, but we have to live with survival. How do we bridge that chasm? How do we deal with that brokenness there?
Oh, that's a really good question. How do we bridge the chasm? That's a unique way in which to posit it and a unique way in which to put it. Let me make an attempt. I think the first, before I start, let me say, Bishop Akins said that he was going to need help. I was just trying to see where he needed help. Yeah. He was like, yeah, if I get anything wrong, come on in and help me. Yeah, I know.
Thank you, Doc.
I was thinking fire the rest of the questions at him. He seems to have a significant grasp. So good to have you, Bishop Akins. So good to
bless you. Bless you, sir. Bless you.
So how do we bridge the chasm? That's a really good question. I think we need to start thinking about the chasm in 4 phases. The first phase I think we need to think about is the necessity of bridging it. You know, often we have looked at what has not happened and we have said, well, it ain't happened, it ain't on my back, it ain't on my shoulders anymore, right? I'll give you a quick example. When Martin Luther King died, the clear successor for the civil rights movement was Ralph David Abernathy. Absolutely. What did he do? He came back to Atlanta and ran for office. And the movement stopped. What happened? A chasm was created. After we had seen significant forward momentum, the death of Martin Luther King, the martyrdom of Martin Luther King, prevented any other man from picking that mantle up. And our community has essentially been disillusioned since then. We've not seen another person with the ilk or the kind of qualities of Martin Luther King have a national platform that pushed for the normalization and equalization of African Americans. So until we have someone who's willing to see it and have a commitment to self-sacrifice, right? In Palestine during the time of Jesus, there was 100 other religions like Christianity springing up. Just about all of them have fizzled out, and Christianity is still the fastest growing religion in the world. Why? Because the first group of people were willing to give their lives for it. You cannot fix a problem if you're not going to give your life for it. If you're unwilling to give your life for it, you will not have it. Pastor Montgomery began to talk about Elijah and Elisha, and I so love the narrative. When Elijah comes out of the Damascus wilderness and had his encounter with God, he says, go back and anoint Hazael, anoint Jehu, and anoint Elisha in your place. When he goes up on the field that Elisha is on, Elisha is plowing. He takes his cloaks and he throws it on him, which means two things. Number one, Elisha did not leave his job to find something. He did his job until it found him. Most of us, we've been walking past our opportunity because we're like, well, I just don't know. No, friends, this thing has found you. We are staring in the face of a divide that we can no longer ignore. And when we start talking about what's my purpose, look at your problem. If you want to know what your purpose is, look at your problem. And the problem becomes the thing that is the impetus for your purpose. We're seeing now social entrepreneurs experiencing phenomenal success because they see a problem and make it their purpose. Man. So we got to address it. Here's the second thing, I think. The second thing is we can no longer be afraid of the issues that come when you have the chasm. We can't be afraid of it. There are people with problems. We just have to deal with them. There are people with struggles. We just have to deal with them. Let's get even more personal. I have them. I have to deal with them. The reason I have such a passionate care and love for others is not because I'm a pastor, not because I grew up in the church, served the church all my life, became a pastor at 22, came to my second church at 25, I've been there for 26 years. No, friends, that is not how I became the leader that I am. First, by realizing that I have issues and then willing to serve no matter what. I want to serve others because all of the things that have happened in my life have come because somebody has served me. I say to my students and I say to those that I mentor all the time that we are all standing on the shoulders of somebody else. Don't you ever fool yourself. We're living under no assumption or limitation. We are all standing on the shoulders of someone else. I was preaching and a young preacher said, boy, I wish I could tune it up like you. I said, I got it from J. Allen Caldwell. If I had not heard J. Allen Caldwell tell you all that, if I didn't hear him do that, I would have no idea how to do it. But I heard someone and he poured into me. And because he poured into me, I was able to stand on his shoulders. It is unfortunate that we have so many people who feel like they're self-made. None of us are self-made. We are all the compilation of somebody's pouring in, somebody's investment, somebody's involvement. I learned to sing 4-part harmony because of my mother, my aunt, and our choir director. I've learned the major characters of the Bible because of my Sunday school teacher. I learned to make right when by the time I got to seminary, I was so far ahead of most of my colleagues because I got this because people poured into me. We just can't be afraid of that. We can't be afraid of the image. We can't be afraid of embracing our problem. Thirdly, though, we can't be afraid of allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. Now, here's what I say about vulnerability. I always temper it like this, Apostle, like this, Pastor. I always temper vulnerability with this. If you can't earn my trust, you can't get my truth or my transparency. In order to get my truth and transparency, you have to earn my trust, right? There's some people who want what you have, but you can't trust them. There's some people who want to be poured into, but you can't trust them. One of the key catalytic encounters that we will have as we prepare the next generation is we got to have people that we can trust and teach them how to be trustworthy. If we're not trustworthy, you will never get the transparency and the truth that you need in order to fully blossom into who you should be. And what we've done is we've allowed people to get titles with no character. So there are people who have titles but have no character or no consciousness. They'll say anything, do anything, and call it ministry, and we validated that. When I was growing up, our pastor would tell us, these licenses to preach are mine, not yours. And if you ever deviate from the faith, I will take my license back. The truth is, friends, we've never really fully challenged people to be trustworthy. How do I know? I look at the state of the church right now. The state of the church, we got people who leave the church. They leave the church. They came to the church with a grand entrance and leave the church in silent recidivism. You're looking at them like, what happened to sister so-and-so? They gone. But they're only gone because we've never challenged them to be trustworthy. And until we're willing to challenge people to be trustworthy, there's going to exist this wide gap between what should be and what should be actualized in both who we are and how we provide success and succession for others. I think the last thing is this. We got to be willing to embrace significant losses because we have high standards. I'd rather lose everything with my standards than to have everything and none.
Man.
I'd rather lose everything, have nothing because I got high standards than to have the biggest church, the largest following of ministers and elders and others, and yet I have no standard. So you can be anything, do anything, and approach me anyway, and it's still okay. No, we gotta deal with that whole standard piece. Until we're willing to deal with that, I think we're gonna still have that chasm.
If I might,
Come on, Bishop.
Well, and I want to piggyback on something that Dr. Hodges said, and in dealing with Elisha plowing the field, him throwing the mantle on Elisha, and I thought about that story because he made a decision right there that there was no turning back. The text said he sacrificed the oxen, he burned the plow, he used the wood from the plow to cook the oxen, and then he served to the community ox and ox tails. Then he
barbecue.
Followed. He had a barbecue. Went back, kissed his mama. Went back, kissed his daddy. Sacrificed the oxen. Used the wood for the barbecue. Cooked the meat. Served the people. Then fought, and that was his way of saying, "I'm not going back. I don't have a plan B. I don't have an alternate plan. I'm all the way in this." And if I'm going to change my self-image, I have to make up in my mind that I'm all the way in this.
Man.
It's going to be this or nothing. I'm going to move everything out of my life that will even tempt me to go back to my old self. I'm not going back to that person. I'm not going back to the terrible husband. I'm not going back to the terrible son. I'm not going back to the wife beater. I'm not going back to the drug seller. I'm not going back to that life because somebody has found me and is willing to take me and give me a positive self-image of myself. Watch this. And all I have to do is follow them. All I got to do is follow Dr. Hodges, follow Dr. Montgomery. That's all I got to do. Follow Pastor Mickles. And they can do that every place in society. But when you follow a man of God, now you're hoodwinked, now you're crazy. They got you in a cult. I watch my grandkids, and people say, I'm elated that they mimic preachers. The other kids mimic other people. I'm glad my grandkids, mimic preachers. Papa, who preached like this? Papa, who say this? Papa, who say that? I would much have them seeing those images than to see some of the other stuff that they have placed before us in society that says this is who we are.
Man.
So I'm encouraging every man, sacrifice your ox, burn up your plow, make a decision that I don't want that no more.
See, Apostle, you've already jumped into the next question.
I didn't mean to. Blame Dr.
No,
Hodges.
no. Because what I'm gonna do, because Bishop started, you ran next, so I'm gonna throw the remaining piece, if any is left on it, to Pastor Munn. And just so y'all can know the question that they're answering, how do I begin to develop my image of self? How do I start changing that? Bishop has already touched it. Apostle has already touched it. Dr. Munn, give us your piece. This is excellent. I want you to know this is gold.
Apostle Paul says, let a man examine himself. I think that's key, because if you look at that Greek word, it means to test or to prove, for the idea of proving. Okay, I view that as to look within yourself for the purpose of divine excavation. Okay, that means that there's something inside of me that I need to dig out, because it is the residue that I did not leave in the water. And this thing has been hindering me for a while, because I have not been able to be the best version of myself. So if I'm going to redevelop I have to divinely excavate out of me the hindrances that continue to plague me. And I can't do that without a proper, honest self-examination. And one of the worst things that men one of the things that men struggle with is self-examination. We will not snitch on ourselves. We will not tell on ourselves. We will not dig into ourselves, because some of us are afraid of what we're going to see, and that's truth. It's hard for a man to face his truth, because he may have to change. Because now let me piggyback on something Bishop Bacon said. When you allow the negative self-image of yourself to become the positive, now you've taken wrong and made it right. And when someone comes and redirects that thinking, you begin to challenge the voice that challenged you. And so now the preacher becomes the enemy. And so whenever the preacher challenges a man to come up to a standard, and God, I like what Bishop Hodges said, Dr. Hodges said about, I would rather go down with a standard than to be regular without one. I just experienced that same thing. Mickles, you know this. Not too long ago, Dr. Hodges, I had to let go of my two, not one, but two praise and worship leaders, because they didn't meet the standard. They didn't meet the standard. They were two of the best in the city. Mickles know them. He's been knowing them for years. They were two of the best in the city. But I had to sit them down, because there was a standard that they did not meet. It was not that they didn't know the standard. It was not they didn't come up in the standard. It wasn't they weren't trained to be. They just chose to embrace something that appealed more to their flesh than to their assignment.
God.
And I had to I had to let them go on pain, dealing with, and got castigated for it. Got castigated by some of my own members, because they had fallen in love with their gift, not realizing that gift without character cannot cause you to stand in a solid place. So I had to make that decision. But I thank God that God always honors your, i.e., my faithfulness, and hopefully, others will hear that when you stand on the standard of God, He always has that ram in the bush to keep His standard going in your house.
Wow.
And I thank God for that. And so to get back to the answer the question, I got to. And I think this is a daily walk. I have to daily examine myself, because who I was last week is not who I am this week. Who I was last year is not who I am now. So I got to constantly re-examine myself to make sure that I am walking in that divine purpose that I am supposed to be right now, because I want to make sure that I please God, and I want to be able to bless his people.
This has been tremendous. I have one last question. We're right at the hour mark. I have one
let
last
me raise one thing for Pastor Montgomery. This is a parenthetical and a side note.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, Bishop.
Pastor Montgomery, and you'll learn this about me. You and Apostle will learn this about me as you get to know me. The nicest guy you'll ever meet, you're probably talking to right now, would do anything for anybody and have a strict record of termination. I have fired people, and I didn't think about it twice. I fired them. Here's why. Because if we allow the standard to be broken, to not be lived up to, God judges us.
Mm-hmm.
God is going to judge us first. When Malachi shows up to see the temple neglected and priests in a field.
Mm.
And they're saying, well, they ain't do it. They ain't bringing what they need to bring in here. He's like, oh, no, this is not how it works. The standard has to be set. And if people don't want to follow that standard, we have to be the ones who are, if you will, the standard bearer. And I know leadership is not always easy, but I'd rather you fall out of love with me because I held the standard than fall in love with me because we have none. And now the glory of God has evaporated because we've got people who live and do anything.
Wow.
Can't do it.
Wow. So I'm gonna toss this one up. Whoever wants it can get it. What kind of support do we as men need as we go through this process of redevelopment? How can our wives, our parents, our family, our children support us as we go through this process? It's a toss-up. Whoever wants it can have it.
We need people that are going to buy in, Pastor Mickles. We need people that are going to buy in. You will never redevelop any self-image if you don't have a community of people that have bought in, which is one of the things that I'm going to suggest, and this might get a little rocky, but we've got two incredible men to kind of stable the ship. We cannot include people in our process of redevelopment that don't have our best interests at heart. That day is over. Just because we got the same last name and the same mom and daddy don't mean we're going in the same direction. Some years ago, I heard a story about a group of men that were working on a building, and the ladder was up and they were going away. And the foreman shows up and he screams up to the top. He said, "Hey, what y'all doing up there?" They said, "We're working really hard." He said, "Yeah, the ladder is on the wrong building." They say, "That's okay. We making progress." We can't have people like that. We can't have people who are in our lives and they doing the wrong work. No. We got to have the right kind of people who have the right kind of attitude, who have the right kind of support, who understands that even in their own struggle, they're saying, "I'm gonna help him, and maybe in helping him, he can help me." But the last thing we need is people that we like that don't have a vision to see us in a better situation. If you can't see me better, if you can't see me change, if you can't see me evolve, that word evolve in the Latin is the word evolvere, and it means to unroll. If you can't see me unroll, and what you see is something that you can appreciate and want to go toward, then you will never be able to appreciate anything that comes from me, and that's where we separate. I am not with the disconnect culture, but I am with disconnecting from foolishness.
I think that's awesome, and I like to, just try to piggyback on Dr. Hodges. My daddy would always say that if you see a turtle on top of a light pole, know that the turtle didn't get there by himself. We need mentors. We need coaches. We need people willing to take responsibility. If you come in my office right now, you'll see what I call my wall of fame. And my wall of fame is preachers mainly, and people, individuals that caught me at different phases of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Reverend Daniel W. States caught me as soon as I left home. In the military, crazy and wild. He settled me down. Command Sergeant Major William catches me while I'm in the military, teaches me how to be a good soldier and how to be a good husband to my wife. You know, my daddy dies early, so my uncle catches me. And he catches me as a young preacher. And he pours into me and he develops me. I had people like Deacon L.C. Cogdale, Deacon Daniels, Deacon Moss, men who was older than me, had respect for me, but at the same time had no problem helping me develop into the pastor that I needed to become. Now, had I fought that because I had my own image of myself and was unwilling to embrace the people that God sent to help me, man, I had guys that wouldn't put up with foolishness. I had men that my wife could call and say, your son ain't doing right. And these men were not afraid to call me and challenge me and ask me what was going on. We need more men like that. I had it. And then last but not least, I had a teacher that said, success without a successor is failure. He said, so if you do not pour into somebody else what I poured into you, then it is impossible for you to consider yourself successful. Set the next man up to win. Set the next boy up to win. Set the next man up to win. We see them every day, but we're not reaching out for them. And that's the last thing I would say. I didn't run these men down and say, hey, here I am. I need your help. These men found me. They looked at me. They saw that I was not living up to the potential that was inside of me. And now I owe that to every other young man that I see, you know, to reach out to them. And I think it starts with that. It starts with the willingness to teach, the willingness to reach, the willingness to pour in. You know, it starts with that, having patience enough to deal, you know, with what I see and don't like. And then helping them get to a place where they can see who they really are and then begin to build on it with the help of positive images around them. I had to change my crowd. I had to change everything. So I had to buy in. And I think Dr. Hodges said, talking about buy-in. Not only did the people around me have to buy in, man, I had to buy in. And when I bought in, guess what? They bought in. When they saw me moving, man, they bought in. So we need more of that.
Yes, we do. Mickles, I'm going to pass. Mickles, I'm going to close with this. Something that we've been saying around our church for the past, I'd say 5 years or so. And the statement goes like this: great leaders create paths for others to follow.
Yes, Lord.
Great leaders create paths for others to follow. And you and our relationship is probably one of the greatest examples of that, because people are attracted to fruit. Men are attracted to fruit. Real logical thinking men, they can point out something that's not real in a moment. I think they used to say in the street like this: game, no game.
Yes.
Okay. And so they look for the real. And I think one of the things that I kind of adopted that statement because I want to show young men something else other than what they have deemed normal and right. And that spreads past just having the best experience at church, and that's good. And we do that with the best of them. But I don't think most of them have that issue. Most of the young men change their self-image is an economic issue. And I think we, even as men of God, have to stretch ourselves a bit, even to be somewhat bivocational, not necessarily clocking in somewhere, but to embrace other areas of generating income to the point to where we can show those young men something else other than slanging on the cone. Because that's what they know to be right, and that's what they've been taught and trained the only way to, one, survive and to prosper and look good and all of that. And I tell young man this, I put my life up against anybody. And I've never sold any type of drugs. I've never done any type of any of those things. And I put my life up beside anybody. I own a bunch of property. We do well. Our church is paid off. We got money in the bank and all of that. Me and my wife do well. And we haven't sold anything at the church. Pastor, you know this. We don't sell anything. Everything is done through the giving of the saints. I don't want anything Uncle Sam got to give me because he's too nosy. He has his hands in everything. He tries to direct stuff. So I don't want anything he's handing out. And so we've done it all through the giving of the saints. But personally, I've done it through this and this. My dad, Reverend Dr. Jose Montgomery Jr., Pastor Nichols knows him well. One of the most, I think, the best exegetical preachers that this side of heaven before he went home to be with the Lord, left to us two wonderful, awesome books that they're still feasting on right now. I learned a lot from that man because, one, he was a builder. And he poured stuff into me when I was young coming up that I didn't realize that was going to be needed in my life. He's a master bricklayer, master carpenter. He built homes, and guess who was his laborer? And I didn't realize the good that he was pouring into me until I had to build my own building, until I had to renovate all of our homes that we owned, until I had to do all of those things so that the labor cost was free because I was it. But what that did was establish something in me that I can pass on to somebody else to let them know you don't have to do this. You can do it this way, and it works just as good. And you don't have to look over your shoulder and wonder every time a police comes down the street that now you worrying and dropping and running. You don't have to do that. That is a better way. So I established that within myself first so that I can pour that out to great leaders, create paths for others to follow. I want to go ahead so that I can look back and tell you, watch out for that pothole, watch out for that thing, watch out for this, watch out for that. Why? Because I don't necessarily believe experience is the best teacher. Guidance and training is. And so if I can train you to move forward based on the steps that I've taken, then I think I can help you guide you around a whole lot of things that you don't step in the same things that I stepped in. And you can be better even than I was, Elisha. I know I did this. If I own 10 homes, I want you to own 20. If I've done this, I want you to double what I've done, because I believe the mentee supposed to outdo the mentor. If I've done my job right, you should be much more than I was.
Amen.
Man.
Listen, this has been tremendous. We've gone over our hour. I'm going to throw it around one last time just for final remarks, and then we'll wrap this up. Now, before I throw it around this last time, I want to say Pastor Munn has mentioned his dad. Apostle Aiken mentioned his Hall of Fame. I'm wearing my Hall of Fame. On this shirt are the pastors and the men, including Pastor Montgomery, including Dr. Hodges, and I got to go and find a way to get Larry B. Aiken on this shirt, because these are the men that I call on to for everything. What I know about money, I learned from Pastor Montgomery. What I'm learning about marriage, I'm learning from Apostle Aikens. What I'm learning about being a pastor, being an effective pastor, I'm learning from Bishop Hodge. So we're gonna go Bishop Akins, Doc Hodge, Pastor Munn, rappers, and we'll call it a night.
Pastor, first of all, just let me say thank you for allowing me to be with these great giants. I have been inspired and impacted, and I can listen to Dr. Hodges all day. I can listen to Pastor Montgomery all day, because I just believe you never stop learning. Yeah. And so I'm really grateful and thankful for being on here. Pastor Montgomery just was talking about the mentor and the mentee. And I do believe that the mentee gets the mentor's wisdom without the mentor's pain. And if we can do that, if we have more, I need his wisdom. I need Dr. Hodges' wisdom. And when I recognize that they're trying to help me and not hurt me, then I can know what they know, but I don't have to suffer what they have suffered. And that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to get young men to a place where they can know what we know. And as Pastor Montgomery said, even do greater things than we will ever do, but they don't have to do it with our pain. And if there's a better way for me to do what God has called me to do and become the person that God has called me to do, what better way to do it than to have forerunners that have gone before me, that I can literally sit, that you know, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying anything wrong with the book, but when I can look at it every day, when I can look at my self-image, when I can look at my positive image every single day, when I can call my positive image, when I can get my hand on my positive image, that will in turn make me a better person. I will look at myself different, and I'll thank God for the difference that they have made in my life. So I do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Apostle.
Bless you.
Now, before Bishop gives his final remark, we gotta say happy birthday to him. He celebrated his birthday the first piece of the month, and I know he's still celebrating. And even while celebrating, he took the time to spend this time with us. So we want to say thank you and happy birthday.
happy birthday.
Thank you, Apostle. Thank you, Apostle. At the end of the day, how bad do you want it is probably the most profound piece of information. Solomon says, a man's appetite works for him. His hunger drives him on. Another translation says his stomach drives him on. And so the very real reality is real change, significant change starts with assessment and appraisal, and then it moves into strategic development of a plan. What are we going to do with what we've learned about ourselves? And then the final is execution. How do we put the tools that we have to task so that we might continue? I teach Christian education, and my opening class I start with, Christian education is lifelong and life-wide. It affects you from the time you're born to the time you meet your maker. And as soon as we realize that, we allow ourselves to be in a cycle of development. We go from one stage and one space. Everything that we do as a human being, we are impacted and affected in one way or another. And so that's my suggestion. Start with an assessment. Who am I and where am I? Locate yourself. And then after you do that, come up with a plan. Put the right people in place. Have a passion for yourself. The reason why the NBA series is tied between Boston and Golden State is because I noticed two passions. Boston came out with a passion that first game. Golden State had passion the second game. And it's that passion that drives them to win. And whoever's going to win will be the ones that will have the passion, the execution, the willingness to make the assessment and move their lives in that powerful, positive direction.
Man. Pastor Munn, wrap us up.
Sir. Yeah, sorry guys, I had a little technical difficulty there. and I didn't get to catch most of what Bishop Aiken said, and I caught the last little bit of what Dr. Hodges said. But I think to wrap it up and to keep it short, I think we as men have a great responsibility for that next generation that comes along after us, that we have to do what we can to not necessarily perfect ourselves, but to fruit ourselves to the point to where we become attractive to them, that they want to be like what they see. And I believe when we do that, then we'll start seeing more young men gravitate to us to the point to where they want to do some of the things they've seen us do. They want to be who they see us be. Because I said it before, we have created a lot of gifting type men and gifting type women, those who, do most of their performing and their expression at church. And so we got great preachers that are lazy or lousy husbands. We got great evangelists that suck as fathers. And we have to get back to what is my first assignment. And when we start expressing that through our own lives, now we have the wherewithal and the fruit and the proof to prove it to them and to challenge them. If God blessed us to do this, if God empowered me and impacted my life, that we were able to do this, you could do the same thing. And I think once we do that, we'll start seeing a great turnaround in our communities, in our cities, in our culture. We'll start seeing a great turnaround, which is what all of us want to see.
Wow, this has been tremendous. This has been, I'm praying that you will soak in the kind of information that's been disseminated tonight. We had Apostle Bishop Larry B. Aiken.
Bless you, sir.
I mean, that guy is everything. We had Dr. Brian Keith Hodges, my Georgia pastor, and that's a genius. And Pastor Darrell Montgomery.
Bless you.
That's the wise man. The wise man. Again, I keep saying, and I keep saying it because it is true. These are the men that I look to for wisdom and counsel, and I want you to glean from the same wells that your pastor gleans from. And I pray that you'll feast on this. Let me bless you. Go in peace. Serve the Lord until next time. Peace.
Bless you, man.